What is the question that you have been asking yourself, say over the past week or so, or the question that most fascinates you right now about the mind?
That the only place to actually live is in the moment. And I hope that no one heard what I just said because it's going to be futile to even listen to what I just said. It's going to be a prescription and it's going to be, yes, yes, I agree, and it's going to be spiritual and it's going to be empty. But I wish that I could speak to you on a very particular wavelength as to the exact and precise context, flavor, and level through which I am speaking, so that you would hear it on the same level, context, and flavor. But it's not going to. How it's going to come across is going to be completely futile.
Well, I want to assume that maybe the ones who know us by now will see, maybe will hear it in a different light. But what does that really mean? What do you mean by that?
It means that everything that our life consists of is essentially stories upon stories upon stories, and our moods and the things that we succumb to emotionally are all based upon the complexity of the fabricated stories, and that none of those stories actually exist. And it is precisely and only when there is nothing in the way of a story that we are responding to, reacting to, or listening to, that we actually are living in a world of truth.
Well, you summed it up beautifully in a tweet. I think a couple days ago or something. When you said everything in a human's life is a game her mind's playing with herself.
Yeah.
Do we ever win at that game? How do we win at that game?
By fully, viscerally recognizing that it's nothing more than a game. That's the win.
So for you personally, is that just something that's constantly going on in your mind? Have you become immune to stories that you're telling yourself or to the crap that your mind's constantly saying?
It is an absolute maniacal and devotional pursuit, but not yet.
But I bet there is a glimpse and there's space that you have during the course of a day where you don't deal with that. True?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that freedom then for you? Is that what we all should be seeking?
Well, no, because it'll be sought after in a pleasurable sort of way, and then it'll be discussed such that, well, I had 4 minutes of freedom today, and last time I only had 3 minutes. And that's not what I want. I don't want pleasure. Um, I'm looking for ultimate arrival and never leaving. I'm not within the scorecard keeper.
So I was very intrigued by the dialogue that you were having with your followers about this. And it was all over the place. And you very elegantly chose to respond to the questions that really were had some depth. But is there a common misconception about the mind, Kapil, that most of us just get wrong?
Well, I think it's the same misconception about everything, which is that everything is viewed through the lens of prescription.
So what are you talking about with that? You hear people talk about the unconscious, you hear people talk about the ego, you hear people refer to the chatter in our mind as the monkey mind. Are you referencing the fact that, hey, we're all seeking a prescription for that?
Yes, that's exactly right. Um, Making it academic and making it prescriptive. So how do I, for instance, if there is chatter, how do I stop the chatter? And uh, what are some techniques in so-called, the disgusting word called a hack? What are the so-called hacks to to overcome these, mind chatter? As if there was a technique or a method that one could employ, and all of the mind chatter would stop. I mean, it's frankly insulting to even ask that question. Uh, it, the realm of unseriousness is so off the chart that one should just cringe and shame for even asking that question. This should be just outright personal embarrassment, and should stand naked in the street for sinking so low as to say, what is a technique for overcoming involuntary thought? You should have shame before asking that question. I mean, that's like saying, how do I hold the entire ocean? Give me a technique that I can hold the entire ocean in an 8 ounce cup. right? It gets serious. So this is why I get annoyed when I have these question answer sessions, and I get these flippant questions that no depth, as you said, no heart, no sincerity, no nuance has gone into the creation of the question. It's just been flippantly thrown out there. They're looking for a free handshake and a Coke.
I want to piggyback on some things that I highlighted that just meant something to me, right? You talk about freedoms is at the other side of the mind. Where is this other side? How do we know we're getting there?
Well, you're not getting there. So just forget about even asking how you know that you're going to get there. You're not getting there because in order to even begin to get there, the idea of prescriptions has to be so completely removed and cleansed from your system that isn't even going to be a possibility until that's first done. And number two, the other side of the mind, that can be viewed in two different ways, and the context of the English language might have made that unclear. Some might have viewed that as um, the other side of the mind, meaning not the right side, but the left side.
Mm-hmm.
And what I meant was the other side of the mind, meaning the other side of the mountain, such that once someone overcomes the mind, then on the other side is the truth, as opposed to the other side within the mind. And that when I was writing that, I felt that could have been misconstrued in that way.
Well, I see it as the other side of the mountain. I mean, that's how I interpret it.
Okay, okay. So essentially, it's only once one gets past the pandemonium and the hurricanes and the tornadoes and the typhoons uh, of stories and identities and likes and dislikes and preferences and prejudices and hopes and dreams and fears and anxieties and pressures and all of the uh, the the complexity and um, uh, miasma that is the mind. Only once one overcomes all of that does the possibility of arriving at true freedom or truth even become remotely possible. Because what will invariably happen is that one will enter that storm and that miasma and try to fix things and say, well, there's a storm. How is it that I can lessen the storm? How is it that I can not get wet in the rain? How is it that I can do X, Y, and Z? And the mind wants you to ask those questions because so long as you are asking them, you are squarely a prisoner of it as you are asking them.
Well, it's obvious that we're all addicted to that side that's either unconscious or ego or whatever it is that you want to call it. And it's very obvious from the interactions that people have with you in general who maybe haven't yet grasped this notion of no prescription. Why the hell are we addicted to that unconscious? Why are we addicted to that side that you're talking about right now?
Because that's the only voice that is available. That's the only message there's ever been. So it really isn't. It really isn't the fault of human beings that they seek prescriptions. That's the only loudspeaker that's been playing in their ear. That's the only tune that they've heard. So there's been no opposing voice whatsoever. So even from the gurus, even from the religions, even from the so-called sacred temples, even from there, it has been the same message of prescription and do this and do that and 20 minutes of this and all of this stuff. So how can anyone reasonably expect any human being not to think?
So let's assume for a moment that I don't want to live in that space anymore, right? If I don't want to live in that space anymore, do you feel like each of us that are serious, the five people that you and I have talked about, can we train our mind to at least start to shift away from that notion of prescriptions and that notion of that whatever it is that's going on upstairs and to start shift more towards truth?
And I think that shift happens when one truly and genuinely examines just how futile and how circular the goose chase has been, and that by continually not having arrived anywhere, then one naturally begins to seek ulterior means, as opposed to um, following the idea that he or she should not follow prescriptions, because that in itself would then become a prescription.
So I want to ask you a couple questions that some friends of mine who are big fans of yours and who are really eager to dig a little bit deeper into your brain in a moment. But before we get to that, something again that emerged yesterday or the other day as I was watching and seeing you respond to some of the messages as you were getting. One of the things that emerges from our unconscious minds, and you hear a lot of leaders talk about this, are the mental models that kind of guide our decision making. What are your thoughts about these mental models that are typically unconscious?
No, those are just more intellectual gymnastics and circular arguments and empty prescriptions. Mental models are empty prescriptions. They are not the truth. They are just ways to think of. They are just constructs. And if you get nothing else out of this talk, understand this. And you don't have to believe me. Examine it for yourself. All constructs fail.
That's one of the things that that's really one that I appreciate so much about how you approach what you do, because there's so much talk about mental models. There's so many books written, so much chatter about the best leaders in the world have these mental models, and your answer to them is they're just like any other involuntary thoughts that we're just you
Well,
know
they're not involuntary. Those are voluntary. I mean, those are, you know, they're, you know, people like to make themselves sound smart. They like to talk about how many books they've read and all the things that they've learned and the opinion of so and so who is some scholar who has done this scientific research on X, Y, and Z. And it's all a bunch of crap. Okay, it's not real. It isn't truth. It's all the words of others. It is regurgitation and it is derivative. It is not truth. It is not genuine. It is not art. It is not sincere. It is all frameworks. It is all scaffoldings that are suspended in the sky that gravity will soon demolish into bits. All of these ideas, these mental models, are all intellectualizations of how to approach things. They are not based upon the sincerity of where things truly come from. They are based upon a mode of attack in order to um, manufacture an approach. Intellectualization is absolutely the order of the day, and it is also, frankly, ignorant.
So this question comes up a lot. Obviously, none of us are immune to mistakes. When you when you look at the really stupid and hurtful things that people do, in your opinion, why do really good people do stupid shit sometimes? Is that the
Uh,
mind?
of course, 100%. Absolutely. Um, the reason that that happens is because we identify with things that are not true. We we proceed and pursue things according to ideas that we believe are a certain way, and they are not. And so, by whenever something is pursued uh, in a way that isn't based upon reality, then mistakes are a natural consequence. They have to be. Whenever something is pursued based upon an understanding of how things really are, then one no longer makes mistakes.
And when you look back at some of the mistakes that you've made, do you sit back and reflect on them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give you an answer, but I mean, I don't want to hold back. I'll give you the
No,
truth.
I don't want you to hold back, but I want you to really help me understand how
Yeah.
you reflect on your mistakes.
So when there's a mistake that is done, the natural consequence and the natural behavior and the natural habit is for someone to say, either to themselves or by way of uh, being given advice from some psychologist or something or a friend, which is that, okay, the next time this happens, make sure that you don't do that. Or the next time this happens, now you've learned, make sure that you do that instead. And and those are all fine and well-meaning, but whatever behavior that one replaces with the old behavior that was ineffective, the new one will be ineffective too. It just may not be as egregious as the old one was, but the old one was egregious because it was a pure form of reaction, right? It was reactivity. Well, the new one is a reaction to the old one. So it also is reactivity. It isn't. It is. It's a reactive fix, and all fixes, like all constructs, fail. And so when you institute the new behavior, so to speak, then that will cause its own problems. And then something bad will happen again. And then you'll say, okay, well, now next time I'm going to do this. And this is what I mean. And 50 years go by and nothing changes. And that's what I mean by all constructs fail. No matter how wonderful the idea seems, it fails. It leaves you stranded in the Sahara every single time. And as a result, one approaching any issue from the standpoint of behaviors is doomed for failure. Behaviors are cosmetic. So one has to approach things if they don't want problems or if they want to minimize the problems that may result by the institution of a certain act or behavior, then one will understand the source from where his actions arose, as opposed to trying to fit a square peg into a round hole because it sounds right and because the psychologist said and because the 5 Steps to Be Happy book said so, and because society will pat you on the back for having done so, and all these things. The problem with doing things in this way, and the reason why it's so easy to do them, is because they sound so nice. But things that sound nice usually aren't right.
So help me with this. There are a lot of people out there who are very critical of themselves, especially in business. And when you reflect on something like that, whether it's a mistake that you made, whether it's poor judgment, whatever, is there a better approach for you to take when you are self-assessing yourself?
Well, the natural answer to that society will give you is don't be critical of yourself. Be your own best friend. And all
Well,
this.
you're not going to give me that. So
So,
tell me the
right.
truth.
So the truth is that it isn't about being nice to yourself or critical of yourself. It's not about it isn't about what you did and what you should have done. It's about whatever you did, what was that a reaction to? That's the truth.
And so dig a little bit deep. Like, can you give me an example? I get it, right? And I was waiting to hear that. Dig a little bit deeper, maybe on something that you explored with somebody or something that you explored
I'm
yourself
never going to
recently.
talk about this thing on the spot. You give me an example, and then I'll go down that road with you.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. I'll give you an actual example. You know what? Let me give you something that is very interesting. I have a dear friend of mine who is a great thinking partner for me, and he is a real advocate of your philosophy. And he was contemplating the other day, talking to me about solutions versus complaints. And he raised a great point. He had heard you talk about running the 4 minute mile before.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that we started to talk about, hey, if you did indeed run that 4 minute mile, and a great majority of your friends were still running the 10-minute mile, how would that impact you? Would that throw you off?
Me personally, or in general,
Yes, you.
um, for me, the training would occur in isolation as much as humanly possible, logistically, um, so that the 10-minute mile would not rub off on me as being a limit that I had to overcome. And that once I reached 9:59, that I had somehow succeeded at something, when it's actually just a false success based upon a reaction to the empty idea of competition. So would it throw me off that I had ran 4 minutes and someone else had ran 10? No, because um, because the things that I would pursue in order to get to that 4 minute would be fundamentally off the charts, wildly in the jungle different. from anything that anyone's doing in society. So it wouldn't throw me off at all.
And you wouldn't have any issues, um, if you were part of a relay team and you were the guy who was doing 4 minute miles and the rest of the crew was way behind.
Well, first of all, I would know that by working within a group of a relay team, it would essentially be an act of mediocrity. So because everyone's going to regress toward the mean. So I really wouldn't want to be part of a relay team. I wouldn't want to be part of any team.
But what if you have to? What if you're running a business and you have to be part of a team?
Ah, that's different. If I'm running a business, I'm the leader of that business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested in what anybody says. The last thing, a, a, a leader who truly wants to make something highly unique and artful will treat his business as an autocracy. The stupidest thing you can possibly do, if you have any sense of genius within you, is to make it a democracy, or is to have these board meetings where you look for others to give you feedback. Yeah, I mean, how can the people who work around Rembrandt give Rembrandt feedback about his art? See, where does this come from? Well,
That's a great question.
okay, so
You can't.
these ideas come from a kumbaya society, which is fearful, and that society is fearful of being unkind, and sitting and singing hymns together, and everyone must be part of the team, and everyone must be given a trophy for participating, and everyone must be counted, and you can run your company if you want that way, but I'll see you in hell.
So let me piggyback on that for a minute. Assume you're that leader for a moment, and you are Kapil Gupta, who is in pursuit at mastering his mind. Knowing what you know, how do you influence people on your team? How do you get the best out of them?
Honestly, it isn't about me getting the best out of anybody. It would be about me bringing people on board to do highly super specific tasks that they were the best in the world at. And I would assess that DNA in the hiring process. It wouldn't be about me bringing in someone in order to get the best out of them.
Don't you feel that it's so then describe to me what if the leader's responsibility isn't to continually get the best or elevate the people that are working on his or her team? What is it then?
Affecting himself. What human beings are most moved by, whether they like it or not, and it's not necessarily an intentional thing, because there's something within a human being that respects something without the human being's consent. Um, Human beings are moved by truth, genuineness, sincerity. They are inspired by uncompromise. They are inspired by seeing in a human being what they wish to long to see in themselves. So, uh, the perfecting of oneself as a leader is really the best chance that one has to influence another. And quite frankly, if he tries to perfect himself in order to influence another, then his act of perfecting himself will be disingenuous and it will fail regardless.
Mm-hmm. That makes a hell of a lot of sense. It really does, and I appreciate you going at it from that angle. And in the process of trying to perfect oneself, what approach do the best people that you work with, is it a constant reflection, is it a constant self-assessment on, here's some things that I could be better at, or what is the process that somebody goes through to continually go, in that self-perfection state?
Well, it isn't what the best people do, it is about how deep one's desire it is to arrive at the ultimate. Um, because quite frankly, there's no one doing these things that I'm talking about. So I don't have any models to give you.
You are the model.
Well, so what I'll say is, if someone truly wants to arrive at the ultimate, what he will do is he's so devoted to the truth, not because he should, but because has recognized that the truth is the only thing in the world that ever fails. So he will be so devoted to the truth that in every situation he would be looking, not mechanically. If anyone walks away with this, I'll slap him. If anyone walks away thinking, okay, so from now on I'm going to ask myself, what is the truth? And there we go, down that mechanical, prescriptive road. When if someone truly wants to arrive at the ultimate, they will constantly be asking themselves what the truth in the situation is, as opposed to what they should do about it.
And do you feel it? Is it something, is the truth felt?
You are asking a question which says, how do I know when it arrives? And I am saying to you that the sincerity of your desire to know it is the arrival.
Okay, I'm going to have to ponder that for a moment, but I got two more questions for you. I know you're not a big proponent of positive psychology, positive self talk, whatever you want to call it, but isn't that better than its opposite?
I'm not looking for what's better and worse. Do I want to? Do I care that if there's two war zones, I want to go to the one that has more sunshine versus the cloudy war zone? I don't care. That's a boring question to me. Why would I ask that question? And why would you ask it? Why would you ask the question that if two things are useless, which one is less useless? Who cares? Why would you not ask the question, what is the ultimate?
Well, tell me what the ultimate is then.
Well,
I'm glad I asked these stupid questions so you can get me to the right questions.
well, the question is, what is the ultimate? The question is not, isn't positive thinking better than negative thinking? Okay, well, isn't, you know, I mean,
A sunny war zone's better than a cloudy one.
that's right. So why live there, right? Why not live? Okay, um, what what way of approaching things does lead one to the ultimate?
Hmm.
Right? What questions
That's
like that
exactly what I wanted to ask. So help me understand that then.
by a desire to know what the truth about a situation is, what the reality is, as opposed to how should I think about it, what hack or mental model should I view this through, as opposed to wearing some colored lens, what with open eyes and no lenses at all, what is the reality of this particular situation? How does it sit naturally? Because once I know the truth about it, then I will be able to navigate through it unscathed.
All right, last question. A lot of people ask you about meditation. I know how you feel about meditation. Um, do you not feel that it serves any purpose at all to try to get me closer to that
Once
truth?
again, you're asking a disingenuous question. You're asking for what is the minimum, right? Do you not think that it gives you anything at all? And so the minute that I say yes, you'll say, see, so you should do meditation.
No, I'm not going to say that. You should know me by now.
Okay.
Have you ever meditated?
Yes, sure, absolutely,
And was that the clue to you that, hey, this doesn't work for me?
correct. But it doesn't just work for me. It doesn't work to get one to the ultimate. Right? I'm not
So it's a false construct for
absolutely,
for
but
the
I mean,
majority of people.
again, it's like going for a job. Okay, so someone could say, once again, it's all in how you phrase the question, right? So you're saying, is jogging bad for you? No. Am I going to die if I meditate? No. But is that a useless question? Yes. The question is, does meditation help you in some way and make you feel a little better? Fine, yeah. So is a multivitamin, right? The question is, does it get you to the ultimate? The ultimate meaning arriving at no involuntary thought, arriving at freedom, having really conquered all your emotions, arriving at peace. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Let me just ask you one other thing. Help me understand the best way to phrase questions. Because this really, I'm enamored and very appreciative about how you do that for yourself. And I'm not asking for a prescription here other than the fact I want to know from your perspective, what do you do to phrase questions that help you reflect appropriately, that help you reflect in the types of depth that's going to lead you to the truth?
To myself or to someone else?
Both. To yourself. I mean, certainly I'd like to get better at it for myself.
Yeah, to myself, it's on a whole other level. Um, I have to sort of pare things down a little bit when I'm talking to another. I have to some degree, come at it from where they are, Um, so what I'll say to you is, and when you talk to any clients of yours or people that you talk to, uh, you know, it would be very dangerous of you to phrase things from the standpoint of the truth, because unless you have vetted these people um, and know for a fact that this is the wavelength that they really are on, it'll only spell disaster for you. Because, like you said, 5 people, right?
Well, a lot of people don't even know what that means, the truth, right? That's misconstrued in and of itself.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, there has to be a vetting process. People who come to you should come after they have read your material or have heard you talk or whatever, so that they know the atmosphere and the environment and the air and the plane in which they are entering into.
So give me a sense of some questions. Like we started with the questions that fascinate you. How about some questions that you've asked yourself that intrigued you recently?
I hate the word recently. Uh, it's
Yesterday.
it's the same things always. It's the same thing always, which is, what is it that I don't know? It's always that category of question. There's always, what is the real truth in this situation?
And do you just keep
Not
drilling down till you
that is
find
not
something, or what are you doing?
what is the truth in this situation that is not born of reactivity,
Hmm.
that sits on its own, that doesn't need support? What is that independent truth that isn't based upon um, being supported by an idea from me or from anybody else? It is the quality and the nature of the question.
You're one of a kind. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.